Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte. Guys, buckle up because we have a long video today. I'm expecting this to be between 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how things work out. We have a lot to talk about today. There was a lot of trades, a lot of draft picks, a lot of players, a lot of goalies, all of that stuff wrapped up in a bow for us at today's trade deadline. Now, to be honest, this deadline compared to other trade deadlines was fairly quiet in the sense that we didn't see the big names, right? We didn't see a couple guys that I'll talk about at the end that didn't get traded. Inevitably, it's just going to mean we're going to see, kind of like last year, what was a fairly quiet trade deadline turn into a crazy summer of trades at the draft table. That's where I think we're going to see the majority of the craziness take place. But with that said, let's get into today's video. So let's start off with a lot of the teams that were talked about. That was a lot of the same teams. So the teams that I'm going to start off with today are going to be a lot of the teams we're going to be talking about throughout the entire video. It was pretty much a domino effect. Because player A was traded out, player B comes in to replace player A, or something of that sort. And you're going to start to see that here. So the first trade that we are going to get to, we're going to go from the smaller trades up into the bigger trades at the end of the video. So if you just want to skip to those, you can do that. But if you want the full dive into all the deals that were made, we're starting from the bottom, working our way up. So the first trade is the Edmonton Oilers acquiring forward DERICK BRASSARD from the Philadelphia Flyers for a 2023 fourth round draft pick. DERICK BRASSARD, I have to say, is still a pretty good player. And I think what people, obviously he always gets tied to the Zibanejad Rangers Senators trade. And I don't think that's really fair to Brassard. He's been a really good hockey player in his career. He's definitely a third liner, a really solid third line center. And the thing is, with the Flyers, he was injured for a lot of this season. He's only played 31 games this season, yet he does have 16 points in those said 31 games. So he's over a point per game. Well, yeah, he's at the point of above a half a point per game. So every other game, he's gotten a point for the Flyers on a really bad Flyers team in that fact. So even before that, last year with the Coyotes, again, another not very good hockey team. He had 20 points in 53 games, 32 points in 66 games with the New York Islanders 3 years ago. He's been a pretty productive player if he's in the third line role with guys that can help him score. And I think he is a really good depth addition to the Oilers, a team that's always gotten themselves into trouble because they never have enough depth. This has always seemingly been a thing with the Oilers, though, is they're always trying to get guys to play alongside that third and fourth line. I think Brassard is a great addition to that fold. His contract does end this summer. He's getting paid $825K and will be an unrestricted free agent this summer. In exchange, the Flyers get a good fourth round pick that, again, it was draft pick season out for Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers. So another pretty small trade here. The Calgary Flames acquire Ryan Carpenter from the Chicago Blackhawks for a fifth round draft pick. Nothing too crazy here as well. Ryan Carpenter has played exactly 300 games in the NHL. His contract ends this summer as well, and he will be a rental for the Flames. We have a lot to get into with the Flames because they made a lot of moves this year. Kalle Jarnkrok coming in, Tyler Toffoli, as well as Ryan Carpenter. Some depth moves that fit in with what Daryl Sutter's trying to get there in Calgary. An interesting trade here, yet I understand it looking now. The Dallas Stars acquire forward Vladislav Nemesnikov from the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings acquire a 2024 fourth round draft pick. So we're going to see a lot of those, especially for the later draft picks. Teams do not want to give up picks in 2023. A lot of teams did at this year's deadline, but a team like Dallas was thinking, no, we don't want to give up 2023 draft picks, so they give up a later round pick in 2024. So kind of interesting how that worked. Nemesnikov fits the bill. He reminds me a lot of a Val Nichushkin-esque player. He's 29 years old. Contract ends this summer. He's making $2 million. And this season, he's put up 25 points in 60 games with the Red Wings. He's actually been a quite productive forward. A nice addition there at the deadline by the Stars. And again, a team that's trying to make the playoffs and actually might beat Vegas out of that final wild card spot. that was a nice pickup for them. Going to add some goal scoring depth. Moving on, here we go. We have the New York Rangers, who are also quite active today, and another team that was quite active, the Vancouver Canucks, making a deal. The Vancouver Canucks send Tyler Mott to the New York Rangers. In exchange, the Rangers give up a 2023 fourth-round draft pick. Really not, again, this fits the mold of a Gerard Gallant bottom six player. Tyler Mott, they saw him a couple weeks ago when he was at the Garden, and I'm pretty sure he scored a goal against the Rangers in that game. He's 27 years old, played in 260 games in the NHL, another pending UFA this summer, and really, at his contract right now, $1.2 million. It won't hurt the Rangers if they kept him or lost him. And considering they gave him a fourth-round pick, that's not too bad. Not to mention this season, he's got 15 points in 49 games with the Canucks. Again, not too bad. The New Jersey Devils were quiet today, but they did make one trade. The New Jersey Devils have been talking about adding another goaltender, losing Jonathan Bernier and Mackenzie Blackwood for likely the rest of the regular season this year, which is the rest of their season. They decided that they still want to compete here down the stretch, so they made a bit of a hockey trade here with Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens. The New Jersey Devils acquire goaltender Andrew Hammond. The Hamburglar heads over to New Jersey. In exchange, the Montreal Canadiens acquire a young hockey player from college. I've heard his name before. I think he played in the Big Ten, Nathan Schnarr. Andrew Hammond, at this point, he is what he is. He's a 34-year-old goaltender that's kind of been a journeyman. He played in 4 games with the Habs this season, putting up a 2.40 goals against average and a .920 save percentage on a very bad Montreal Canadiens team. That's pretty damn good. In his career, over 60 games in the NHL, he has a .923 save percentage and a 2.32 goals against average. So he might get a pretty good shot here with the Devils. Same thing as most of these guys. His contract does end this summer as a pending unrestricted free agent. Nate Schnarr has spent the entire season in Utica with the Utica Comets. He's spent his entire professional career in the American Hockey League. He played with the Tucson Roadrunners before he was traded in the Taylor Hall trade. The trade where the New Jersey Devils sent Taylor Hall to the Arizona Coyotes. Nate Schnarr was originally a 2017 draft pick of the Arizona Coyotes, which is interesting. So he has got some AHL experience this year, 26 points, 43 games. Still a fairly young player. I would consider him a prospect. No NHL games yet. He is 23 years old. The Rangers get on the market again, adding another forward into that bottom 6. I like this trade for a lot of reasons. This is a nice trade. The New York Rangers acquire forward Nick Merkley. In exchange, the San Jose Sharks acquire Anthony Boteto, the defenseman. Nick Merkley is the much younger player in this deal, 24 years old. A first-round pick back in the day of the Arizona Coyotes. Another guy that weirdly was a part of that Taylor Hall trade. He ended up getting traded from Arizona. Then he ended up going to San Jose last offseason or during the year this year. And now he gets traded again, now over as a member of the Rangers. He's from Calgary, Alberta. Like I said, 24 years old, former first-round pick. This season, he has spent most of his year in the American Hockey League. He's got 36 points in 43 games with the San Jose Barracuda. And he does have 3 points in the NHL this season in 9 games with the Sharks. Another guy, he will be a pending UFA this year, except, let me change that. He is a restricted free agent, which means the Rangers do hold his rights this summer in terms of a new contract. And he's one of those guys, he's already got 41 NHL games under his belt. I think that's a good thing. Anthony Boteto, a more veteran defenseman, 31-year-old defenseman. He's from Island Park, New York, so the local gets sent out of New York. His contract does end this summer at $737.5K. This is probably the end of the road for him. He spent the last 2 years in Hartford with the Wolfpack, and I would say that's probably it for Anthony Boteto. Moving on, we have another little batch of teams here as the Winnipeg Jets. Yes, they actually brought in somebody. So they acquire Zach Sanford from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for a 2022 fifth-round pick. Nothing all that exciting. Sanford, a former second-round pick in 2013. This season, he's picked up 17 points in 62 games with the Senators, over 200 games in the NHL. His contract ends this summer. He's getting paid $2 million, and like I said, a UFA this summer. Another pretty interesting trade, as there's more of a backstory to it than what the trade actually is. Defenseman Josh Brown, a 2022 conditional 7th round pick, go to the Boston Bruins. In exchange, the Ottawa Senators acquire former first-round draft pick in 2015, Zach Senyshyn, and a 2022 5th-round pick. You look at the trade overall, it's not that big of a trade, but here's the interesting thing. So that 2022 7th-round pick going to the Bruins is on a condition. It ends up becoming a 6th-round pick if Zach Senyshyn plays at least 5 games with the Ottawa Senators. Now, what's the context behind Senyshyn? Senyshyn is one of those infamous 3 draft picks in 2015 of Peter Chiarelli, drafting consecutively Jakub Zboril, Zach Senyshyn, and Jake DeBrusk. All 3 of those guys are really nothing, and this is no disrespect to those players, but you look at the guys that were drafted just after that. Kyle Connor, Matt Barzal, Jacob Chikrin. You could have had those 3 guys, and those are the guys you have now. So that's really the main part of this deal. At least they get rid of Senyshyn at this point. I think it's just irks, I think, the Bruins fans, knowing that there's a good chance for Senyshyn to get a fresh start somewhere, get that first-round tag off of him for a little bit, and just see what he can do. Josh Brown going to the Bruins totally fits the bill for the Bruins. A big blue liner just fits the bill there of that kind of player. 6'5", 217 pounds. This guy's no joke. 28 years old. His contract ends this summer. Quite fittingly enough, a lot of the other players here as well. And he does have 6 points, but he's known for his PIMs. 32 penalty minutes this season with the Ottawa Senators. And then Zach Senyshyn, like I said, he's only played 14 games in the NHL since that draft. Oof. So that's hopefully the end of that. So now we have a lesser trade. This is more of a minor league deal. I'm not going to get into the details of this one. The LA Kings acquire Frederick Allard. In exchange, the Nashville Predators acquire BRAYDEN BURKE. Allard is a right shot defenseman, and BRAYDEN BURKE is a left winger, an undrafted left winger playing in the NHL. Moving on here, we've got another interesting trade here with the Arizona Coyotes picking up the signing rights, or the rights to Jack McBain. In exchange, the Minnesota Wild acquire a 2022 second-round pick from the Vancouver Canucks. That is the Vancouver Canucks pick, but the Minnesota Wild have acquired it now. I'm pretty sure that was a part of the big Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Connor Garland trade last summer. And Jack McBain did not want to sign with Minnesota. Now, the funny thing is, it's kind of like, well, is he going to sign with the Arizona Coyotes if he doesn't want to go to Minnesota? I don't know. He is from Toronto. I wonder if he just ends up going to the Toronto Maple Leafs this summer, which, why not just add more good players to the Leafs, right? But that seems like that's what he's trying to do here. So we'll see what happens. Again, it costed the Coyotes a second-round pick, but they have so many damn picks. It's not that big of a deal. And I think they're going to try their luck with this kid. He's been playing at Boston College. He's in his senior season, 22 years old. He's primed to come to the NHL in the fall this year, or at the very least playing professional hockey on a professional contract. All right, so the Arizona Coyotes were not done there. They traded out goaltender Scott Wedgwood, who has actually been very good. I'm surprised they made this move, trading out Scott Wedgwood for a 2023 4th-round pick. It becomes a 3rd-round pick if the Dallas Stars make the playoffs, which seemingly by the day, with the way things are going in Vegas, it seems more and more likely. Scott Wedgwood has actually been really good here. He's been, again, another journeyman goaltender. He played 3 games to start the year in Jersey, got picked up on waivers by the Arizona Coyotes, and has played 26 games for the Yotes. He's got a .316 goals against average and a .911 save percentage, which is actually pretty impressive. He's 29 years old, from Brampton, and his contract ends this summer. Again, he's just one of those, he's a 3rd goaltender, and I think for the Dallas Stars, they wanted to add some goaltending depth. I think that was a good move. He's actually been quite well, playing quite well for the Arizona Coyotes, and has kept them in some games this year. Moving on, and this is a shout out because his family's actually reached out to me to pronounce his name correctly. Jeremy LAUZON. Does that sound right? I think I pronounced it right. The defenseman who was claimed in the expansion draft from the Seattle Kraken last year, who they got from the Bruins, who was drafted by the Bruins, ends up going to Nashville. Jeremy LAUZON is in exchange, the Nashville Predators give up a 2022 second-round draft pick to the Seattle Kraken. I think it's a good trade for both sides. The Kraken loading up on draft picks. Maybe they didn't see a spot for LAUZON in the lineup, and they figured, you know what, maybe it's better that we send him out. This may be a better opportunity for him. You look at the defense in Nashville. They've actually been pretty good, and he may have a spot with some of those veterans in there. He might actually have a chance to play a little bit. 24-year-old left shot defenseman, again, former second-round pick back in 2015. He's got over 100 games in the NHL, and he is a restricted free agent this summer. And that wasn't it. If you thought that was it for the Seattle Kraken or the Winnipeg Jets, you would be wrong. The Winnipeg Jets reacquire Mason Appleton from the Seattle Kraken. In exchange, the Kraken get a 4th-round draft pick. This is one of those trades, kind of like Vitek Vanacek last year when the Capitals reacquired Vanacek. Mason Appleton goes back to the team that he was originally with. There was no salary retained, so it was allowed by the NHL. Mason Appleton adds some more center depth to the Winnipeg Jets. Not a bad trade. And again, the Kraken picking up some more draft picks. Mason Appleton at 26 years old from Green Bay, Wisconsin, so probably a Packers fan. He's got almost 200 games in the NHL. And this season with Seattle, he's got 17 points in 49 games, which is pretty impressive. And again, a restricted free agent this summer. The Penguins weren't that active at the deadline this year up until the very end, and we'll get to that later on. But they made one other trade today. The Pittsburgh Penguins acquired defenseman Nathan Boya. In exchange, the Winnipeg Jets get a 7th-round pick, a conditional 7th. The Pens say he will remain on long-term injured reserve. I wonder if it's games played, which is the condition on that draft pick. So a 2022 7th-round pick, nothing really there for the Jets. They just get a draft pick for basically a depth body defenseman. Okay, so this one isn't really that big of a trade here, but it's more the salary cap situation. So with the Arizona Coyotes sending out so many players here ahead of the deadline, they needed to recoup enough to get to the salary cap floor. There was some talk. That video did very well earlier this week. Shea Weber maybe going to the Arizona Coyotes. That probably won't be happening. As the Arizona Coyotes strike a deal here with the Winnipeg Jets, the Winnipeg Jets acquire a 2022 4th-round draft pick. In exchange, the Arizona Coyotes get Bryan Little, and his contract has another 3 years left on it, $5.29 million per season, and that is a long-term injured reserve contract, which kind of gets to the point where that's just getting them to the cap floor. It's not money they will actually be paying Bryan Little. It seems like more of a signing bonus heavy contract, which means this will actually help the Coyotes. Like I said, they don't have to pay the actual money out, but they're getting the salary cap on the books for the NHL to be above the cap floor. So that's what that is. Nathan Smith and his signing rights. So that's the second time we've seen the Coyotes acquire the signing rights of another player. 23-year-old player drafted in the 3rd round by the Winnipeg Jets. He's been playing at Minnesota State University. And he's played quite well there. He picked up 49 points in 34 games here in his junior season. So he'll probably be returning to Minnesota next year. So not too bad, and that's kind of the situation there. And Bryan Little, like I said, probably played his last game in the NHL. Not a guarantee, but at 34 years old, 800 games in the NHL, there's a lot of mileage on that body. You just wonder if Bryan Little is going to come back. We had a rivalry trade. This one kind of surprised me a little bit, maybe because it wasn't Giroux, but it does make sense. The New York Rangers acquire pending unrestricted free agent defenseman Justin Braun from the Philadelphia Flyers. In exchange, the Flyers acquire they recoup pretty good stuff here for Justin Braun. A 2023 third round draft pick. Justin Braun, right shot defenseman, is going to add, it's kind of the situation that the Leafs had, right? You had a lot of the young guys like Liljegren, Sandin in the lineup. The Rangers kind of have that right now with Braden Schneider and Nils Lundkvist. Justin Braun's going to bring that veteran presence to the locker room. And at 35 years old, who knows how much Braun has left in the tank. He's going to be playing in 800 games probably by the end of the regular season. And his contract ends this summer, $1.8 million on Justin Braun. Nice pickup there for the Rangers. And I have to say, that's a guy that's going to add some punch to the blue line. And again, fits very nicely with a Gerard Gallant team and mindset. So another little bit of an interesting trade. Another goalie trade here as the San Jose Sharks acquire goaltender Kaapo Kähkönen and a 2022 fifth-round draft pick. In exchange, the Minnesota Wild acquire big young defenseman Jacob Middleton. Kaapo Kähkönen is a former fourth-round pick of the Minnesota Wild. He's had 54 games in the NHL. His contract ends this summer as a restricted free agent, so gives San Jose some leverage in that. Jacob Middleton, we've heard a lot of rumors about him getting traded. 26-year-old defenseman. His contract does end this summer as a restricted free agent. He has played 45 games in the NHL. Most of that has been with the American Hockey League this season. 22 games in San Jose with the Barracuda. And this is a guy, he's going to give you the penalty minutes. He's got 82 penalty minutes in the NHL. Speaking of that same line of a big defenseman, a team that needed that edge, the Edmonton Oilers did that, acquiring not only DERICK BRASSARD, but Brett Kulak from the Montreal Canadiens. And the Canadiens here, pretty nice package here, going back the other way. Forward Will Legeson and a 2023 second-round pick. Well, breaking this trade down, the Oilers, quite frankly, their defense has been subpar this season. So even if he takes away 2 or 3 minutes per night for Darnell Nurse at the end of the day, that's a great move there. Brett Kulak, left shot defenseman, 28 years old. He's got over 300 games in the NHL. This is a guy that is a good rental for what they're looking for. Big body, 6'1", 197 pounds. Brett Kulak's going to add that little bit of edge and sandpaper to the Edmonton Oilers, which they desperately need. And a team that's got a lot of the same type of defensemen, like Dmitry Samorukov, like Tyson Barrie, all puck-moving defensemen, but not the most difficult to play against. Brett Kulak brings that edge. And not to mention, he just went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2020 with Les Habitants in Montreal. Okay, so now we're starting to get to the more upper echelon trades here. Water break. So this is where things get more interesting. So the St. Louis Blues were looking for a defenseman in the market, and I was really expecting a Craig Berube defense to be bigger, right? Ben Sherratt's off the board. Big Mark Giordano's off the board. Well, who else was really available? Well, they go with the puck-moving defenseman, which definitely caught me by surprise here, but he could play in the top 4. The St. Louis Blues acquire defenseman Nick Leddy and forward Luke Witkowski. Now, Luke Witkowski is kind of the Brent Burns effect. He plays forward, defense. He's just a goon. He's the fighter guy. So that's really what you're getting out of Witkowski. Nick Leddy, though, very good. People are going to hate me for saying this. He reminds me a lot of Ron Francis as a defenseman. Just so smooth, silky smooth, just skating through the other team. Just able to break out the puck. Like, instead of dumping and chasing, Nick Leddy can actually bring the puck into the zone through players. And that is just, it's something that when you're watching it, you're going to see Blues fans. I think this is one of the more underrated moves of the day. Nick Leddy to the Blues. He's going to play in the top 4. And I think this is just something that just is it's a perfect fit, quite honestly. Great move there by the Blues. The Red Wings, though, they made, this is a little interesting, the return here. The Blues were willing to give up assets going to the Red Wings. Forward Oskar Sundqvist, Jake Wallman, and a 2023 second-round pick. So the Red Wings get a second-round pick, Oskar Sundqvist, and Jake Wallman. Like I said, Nick Leddy, 31 years old. Luke Witkowski, a little bit older. You're looking at younger guys going to the Red Wings. Jake Wallman, a left shot defenseman, 26 years old. His contract ends this summer, restricted free agent. 57 games in the NHL. And Oscar Sundqvist, kind of interesting to see him thrown in this package. Has been a really good player with the Blues. And remember, he was a Pittsburgh Penguins draft pick back in 2012. He was traded over to St. Louis in 2017. And since then, he has been pretty good in St. Louis this season. He's got 15 points in 41 games. He'll probably hit 300 games in the NHL, either at the end of this season or the beginning of next year. And he is a unrestricted free agent summer next year. So the Red Wings, depending on how things go, they could re-sign him next summer they could re-sign him around this time next year, or they could trade him as a rental, right? Oscar Sundqvist, this is a Steve Yzerman trade. This is him thinking ahead. I really like that move there. And like I said, Jake Wallman is a restricted free agent this summer. But like I said, Nick Leddy, I think a very underrated pickup by the St. Louis Blues. Not what I was expecting, but a good pickup nonetheless. So now we're going to get into a flurry of trades in Washington, and it actually involved one of their former Caps players returning to DC, so we'll get to that. The first one being, though, the Arizona Coyotes swindling a deal with the Caps. The Washington Capitals acquire Johan Larsson, and 50% of the salary does get retained by the Coyotes. In exchange, the Yotes pick up a 2023 third-round pick from the Caps. Overall, again, this is a very nice depth pickup for the Capitals, and they're letting everyone know, listen, we're legit this year. And they did that here, a rental, $1.4 million this season. He's got 15 points in 29 games in Arizona. Johan Larsson, again, one of the more underrated pickups today. Nobody's really been talking about. 29 years old. This is a nice addition to the Caps' bottom six. Probably going to be playing alongside guys like Lars Eller. Probably going to fill in a role of what's his name? Daniel Sprong, who just got traded out. We're going to get to that right now. So I think overall, this is a great move here by the Caps. The Caps weren't done there, though, yet either, as the Washington Capitals made a trade with the Seattle Kraken. The Seattle Kraken acquire former first-round pick Daniel Sprong. He was a part of the Marcus Pettersson trade a couple of years back. They also get a 2023 fourth-round pick and a 2023 sixth-round draft pick. The Washington Capitals, yes, JoJo is coming back to DC. Marcus Johansson coming back to the Washington Capitals. Again, half his salary retained here by the Seattle Kraken. Daniel Sprong, like I said, a 2015 second-round pick. Somebody was going to correct me, so I'm going to correct it before you get there. 25 years old. This is a guy, when he came into the NHL from Pittsburgh, he was a very highly thought of prospect, a sniper in the top six in the NHL, and it really hasn't worked for him. He has spent all of this season with the Washington Capitals, and last season, 42 games last year, he had 20 points. This season, he actually regressed, only 14 points in 47 games. He spent some time in Hershey, San Diego, in the American Hockey League. He just hasn't gotten that scoring touch that everybody has kind of been fantasizing about. It just hasn't really clicked yet. And for all we know, it may never click. But the big thing is, left winger Marcus Johansson returns to the Capitals. This is a glue guy. This is a great addition back into Washington. He knows a lot of those guys. He knows TJ Oshie. He knows Nick Backstrom. He knows Ovechkin. He knows Wilson. All those guys are his buddies. So this is really nice to see him return to Washington. And, his last season in Washington was the 2016-17 season, which just shows you how long ago it's been. But this is one of those reunions. I'm sure Caps fans are quite happy about this. He was a fan favorite, and he will be back in Washington. His contract does end this summer, though, but I could see this being more of a long-term fit. He says, listen, I'm 32 years old. I'm just going to sign long-term here. Give me a 1 or 2 year deal, $1 million per year, and let's call it a day. I could see that really working out nicely in a deal. And like I said, Marcus Johansson is back in DC. So now, here we go. Now we're starting to get to the bigger trades on the day. I know, so exciting, right? So the Anaheim Ducks, we knew that this was going to come inevitably. They traded Josh Manson. They traded Hampus Lindholm. They had to trade Rickard Rakell. And this was actually one of the deals I was waiting to get more details about before making this video. I'm actually going to check it right now just to see what came of it. And yeah, there's been nothing on this. I don't really understand here what happened with the Rickard Rakell trade. Kind of interesting. Okay, so let's just get into what we do know. So Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson go. Rickard Rakell is now a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So the Penguins bring in Nathan Boya on the back end and Rickard Rakell up front. This is from Bob McKenzie, who reported it. The Rickard Rakell goes to the Penguins for Zach Aston Reese, Dominic Simone, a 2022 second-round pick, and a prospect. And I've been trying to figure out who the prospect is. We don't actually know up to this point. And if I can, I'll edit it in the video by the time this goes up. But Rickard Rakell, 28 years old, pending UFA this summer. And he's done quite well in Anaheim this year. Maybe not to the level that he would like. His best season in the NHL was the 17-18 season, where he picked up 69 points in 77 games. He hasn't really gotten anywhere near that since. This season, he's got 28 points in 51 games with the Ducks. Over 500 games in the NHL. He just fits the bill of a Penguin. And I know I made videos about this like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Water break. I talked about the Penguins really being interested in Rickard Rakell. And I know they wanted Anthony Mantha last year from Detroit. He ended up going to Washington. I think Rickard Rakell is going to bring that same kind of game. Definitely more of the skill game. But I think this is a really nice addition for the Penguins. And depending on what happens this summer, let's say Brian Rust leaves. Let's say Evan Rodriguez leaves. You can keep Rickard Rakell. He's going to say, listen, they believed in me. They picked me up at the trade deadline. I'm willing to take a little bit less. And even if that doesn't happen, the Penguins are in a cup window this season. You have Malkin on the final year of his deal. So you got Gino, Letang, Rust. They're on the final year of their deal. This is the year to win for Pittsburgh. So we'll see how things go here down the stretch. The other way, though, for the Anaheim Ducks, looking at some of these players, they picked up some depth forwards. Dominic Simone, 27 years old. He played a lot of games in Pittsburgh this year. He only got 9 points. He's one of those guys. He's got 200 games in the league. It's more for the draft pick. They do get that second-round pick that they wanted. Zach Aston Reese from Staten Island, New York, man. So he's going all the way out to Anaheim. This is another player. He's got 5 years in the NHL, over 200 games. So he's got some NHL experience, but I could tell these are more just depth guys at this point. It's really the Ducks got their second-round pick for Rickard Rakell, and I'm surprised it was only that much. Okay, so now the Colorado Avalanche. Joe Sakic made a bunch of moves here over the past week, and he made some more complimentary pieces in terms of additions to his roster today. The first one being the Colorado Avalanche acquire veteran forward. He had an Ironman streak in the NHL. Andrew Cogliano goes from the San Jose Sharks to the Colorado Avalanche. The Sharks pick up a 2024, that's right, not this year's draft, not next year's draft, 3 years from now draft. That's what we're talking about here, a 5th round pick for Cogliano. So kind of interesting there. Cogliano, I really liked him when he was a member of the Anaheim Ducks. He was drafted by the Oilers and during the oil change, that infamous run there. He's got a lot of mileage in the NHL. Over a decade, his first NHL season was the 07-08 season. So he's been around the block in the NHL. He's been on some really good hockey teams. He's been on some really bad hockey teams. I'm talking about you, Edmonton. And then some good teams like the Ducks. So this is one of those things that I think Cogliano is a great glue guy. I'm surprised that San Jose, again, I think they figured they're not going to make the playoffs this year, but I'm surprised that they gave up on Cogliano. I get it, 34 years old. They don't see maybe if they don't make the playoffs get something for him. Interesting move there. But that wasn't it for Joe Sakic. This was one of the marquee trades of the day. The Colorado Avalanche acquire forward Arturi Lehkonen from the Montreal Canadiens. And the Canadiens got a pretty nice package here for Arturi Lehkonen. They pick up, of course, he has to be French. He's a francophone. I know he played with the Halifax Mooseheads in the Q. Justin Braun, and a 2024 second round draft pick. So, let's break this down. So, the Avalanche get Artturi Lehkonen. Now, everything has kind of skyrocketed for Lehkonen since last year's playoff run. He went to the finals with the Habs. He had a pretty impressive season last year, but he's doing even better this year. He had 13 points in 47 games last year. He already has 29 points in 58 games this season with the Habs. And again, this is a bad Montreal Canadiens team. He's going to hit 400 games within the next week or two. He's got 396 already. 26 years old, this Finnish guy coming in. I could see him being a nice fit with the Avalanche on the wing. And what you get with Lehkonen is a guy that's not fun to play against. He's a young guy. He's got the speed. He's a really fast player. That's something I've noticed. Both Cogliano and Lehkonen, very skilled, very good, fast skaters. I think that's what Joe Sakic was looking for on the market, and he definitely got that. His contract right now, $2.3 million for the remainder of this season. He'll be a restricted free agent this summer. Like I said, this is a guy, he's a winner. He's won with Finland in the past in the World Junior Championships. This is a really nice addition for the Avalanche. Now, what do the Montreal Canadiens get? Kent Hughes has done a very nice job in his first trade deadline. There was some questions. I was like, why did they bring in this Kent Hughes guy? Who is this guy? Well, it seems to be working out quite well. And like I said, you pick up Justin Braun, a right-shot defenseman who a lot of people are projecting to be, at the very least, a second pairing, potentially even a first pairing defenseman in the NHL. And he's coming home. He's from Halifax, Nova Scotia. 20 years old, a first-round pick in 2020. And like I said, he's played 4 seasons with the Halifax Mooseheads. He's played the last 2 years primarily in the American Hockey League. He's got 50 games in the AHL, 24 points. As a defenseman, that's pretty impressive. His contract doesn't run out until 2024, so they have plenty of time for him to season in Laval, probably for the rest of this year. He may even get a crack at the starting lineup next year for the Montreal Canadiens. Probably next spring, I would say, for the Habs. He might get a shot in the NHL, but Justin Braun, a pretty prized possession there in Colorado. They were able to get him out. Not to mention, they also pick up another draft pick, a 2024. Not this year's draft, not next year's draft, 3 drafts from now. Just making my point on that. This is going to be one of those things. A lot of teams, they don't like this year's draft. A lot of teams aren't willing to give up picks in 2023 because they like that draft, or only teams will take draft picks from 2023. It's just a big mess. That's really what this all is. And then we get to the marquee trade of the trade deadline. Now, we've been talking about this for the past 2 or 3 days now. We've heard about it for the past week. And that is the Minnesota Wild laying the boom. They get a big addition behind Cam Talbot. Now, I talked about how they traded out Kaapo Kähkönen to the San Jose Sharks earlier today. Well, they couldn't do that unless they knew they were getting somebody better in return. Marc-Andre Fleury, the Flower Power, is heading to Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. The Minnesota Wild acquire Marc-Andre Fleury in exchange. The Chicago Blackhawks, for that matter, pick up what we all expect them to pick up this time of year, a 2022 second-round draft pick. Now, there is a condition on that draft pick. That 2022 becomes a first-round pick if the Minnesota Wild make the Western Conference Finals and Fleury wins 4 of his first 3 wins. Oh, if he wins 4 games in the first 3 rounds, kind of interesting thing there, but okay. So just to clarify that, if Minnesota makes it to the Western Conference Final and Fleury wins 4 games throughout the first 3 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs, which I'm pretty sure will happen. Cam Talbot, though, has got to be shaking in his boots a little bit, as now Marc-Andre Fleury, the 3rd winningest goaltender in the NHL's history, only behind Martin Brodeur and Patrick Roy. And who better to fit in there than another French-Canadian goaltender, Marc-Andre Fleury. 50% salary retained here by the Chicago Blackhawks. His contract right now, like I said, ends this summer, $7 million. And you look at how Vegas so poorly handled the Marc-Andre Fleury situation. I mean, they traded him for basically nothing. And now he gets traded for a potential first or second round pick. Just so incredible. He won the Vezina Trophy in 2021, which was last season. He also won the William M. Jennings Trophy alongside Robin Lehner with the Vegas Golden Knights. And now a year later, how things have changed. He is now a member of the Minnesota Wild. That is the big trade of the deadline. It really, I don't know, there were some more names I was expecting to hear out there, but this is how the deadline works. There are guys you think are going to go and guys that don't end up getting traded at all. A couple of interesting names that we were hearing about. Brock Besser in Vancouver. JT Miller, just that completely dried up. So we knew that probably wasn't going to happen. But Brock Besser, what's going on there? The Canucks, surprised they didn't do anything in that regard. John Klingberg in Dallas. We thought it was a foregone conclusion that Dallas was going to get rid of Klingberg. I guess they figure they have a chance to make the playoffs here. The mojo's going pretty good. Maybe they just stick it out. And I think this East Coast road trip right now is kind of important for Dallas to figure out what they're going to be here down the stretch, because Vegas is there's blood in the water. Vegas is super banged up. Eichel's out, Leonard's out, Stone's out. You look at that team, they are banged up. Dallas is knocking on the door of the playoffs, and maybe they figure we're going to lose John Klingberg. We'll lose him for nothing for a good playoff run this year. And maybe that's what they kind of doubled down. They bring in Nemesnikov. They brought in some guys that maybe you weren't expecting them to bring in. Overall, I think it was a pretty good deadline overall, though. This is just what you expect, right? Colorado going in big, making some big moves. The Florida Panthers kind of did their dirty work earlier on in the week. And the Chicago Blackhawks, Fleury, yeah, that was the marquee trade. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. If you stuck around this long, I definitely appreciate that. Or if you skip through little parts here and there. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.